So first of all, the show was incredible, and your Nick De Noia, I guess, was iconic. And I want to really,
good,
really iconic. Yeah, I want to ask you if you what did you know about the story about him, and how did you prepare for this role? If you did some research, I don't know.
Yeah, I knew nothing really, which I think is one of the exciting things about this show, because I think a lot of people in the US particularly know the Chippendales, but don't know this sort of very dark backstory behind the sort of Chippendales phenomenon. So I really knew nothing. So I was so fascinated to know that there was this incredible kind of roller coaster ride of a true crime story behind this, fun kind of campy sort of world that I knew about. And I think it's one of the things that makes this show really special is it's got that balance of this kind of, 70s and 80s, like fun kind of campiness mixed with this like true crime stuff. But, the fact that there was footage of this amazing man, Nick De Noia, who I played, was super helpful and a great kind of jumping off point for me. And I mean, he's an amazing, I think an amazing man, and like incredible to watch in those videos. And I don't know whether you saw, but he made this amazing show called Unicorn Tales, this children's show, which he won 2 Emmys for. And you get a sense of, what a creative visionary this guy was. So I just, I was really inspired by what I could gather from, existing sort of footage or stuff that he'd done. And then we had this amazing team of writers who, created a version of the story based based tightly on the main points of the real story. But then we could, really play and kind of make it our own, which was super exciting and fun.
I mean, I told you it was iconic, but I believe he is even a really complex character because he has so many layers. So I want to ask you if there was something really challenging for you, even in a positive way, about this role.
Yeah, I think, one of the things of having the freedom to the show is based on a book, and that we had some license to kind of imagine things about these characters is there's not a lot of, personal stuff about Nick De Noia available. So, and I think what's interesting about him, well, one of the things that's interesting about him is he presents as this sort of, tornado of a man in a way, which is super fun to play and very kind of seductive about him, but to kind of imagine and to dive into what is beneath that was really something I was particularly interested in, and what's behind the face of a character like that. And I think that there's vulnerability, and there's fear, and there's doubt, and there's all sorts of stuff. So that was the side of thing that I was, especially interested to dive into as an actor, even though I was excited to play all the fun, wild stuff as well. But I think he is, it's what's great about this show is it takes these characters and really looks at the complexity of them, not just sort of making them kind of cut out, cartoon characters. They're real human beings who, they might present in one way, but they're fully rounded, three-dimensional characters.
I completely agree. You actually smoke a lot, in the show. Smoke the cigarettes.
Oh my god! Yeah, I have to say, like, I loved it, which is worrying. I don't smoke, but like the feeling of, and we had an incredible team, so it was beautifully lit. So there's I once I remember we were sitting in like this diner, and like there's these like blinds, and I'm smoking, and the lights streaming through the smoke. I mean, it's just it's sort of living your filmmaking fantasies in a way, being able to smoke. But I have to say, those days, because we're doing multiple takes and I'm smoking, a lot in those scenes. The next day, my chest felt pretty tight, but it was fun to be able to kind of dive into that period where lots of people smoked a lot and enjoy the action of it, even though it was probably not great for my body.
No. So one last question about the show. Clearly, as you said, it is really a true crime story, but I guess even in the dark shades, it kind of explained to us some social and cultural turning points. So I want to ask you, which aspect of the story impressed you the most?
I think there are some really fascinating themes in the show. It's an immigrant story about this, this guy, Steve Banerjee, which I think is, probably always through history pertinent, but it feels particularly pertinent now. The specifics of his immigrant story, I think, are really interesting in that he had this American dream, but what happens when your American dream kind of gets hijacked by some sort of the darker side of capitalism, and you become obsessed with money and fame and success, whatever that is. I think that I find that really fascinating about this story, and it feels very relevant. Also kind of interwoven with that and in relation to that, I guess, this sort of what feels like not blind ambition, but just unchecked ambition of particularly Nick De Noia and Steve Banerjee, and what that does to you. It takes you to some really dark places, and I think it's sort of a cautionary tale in that way. I think there's a lot of things about these characters and about this story that is very relevant, and relevant to elements of our sort of societies that are spinning wildly out of control. When does this sort of need for more and more and more, and this kind of obsession with making more, is it just going to take us into sort of destruction, or do we take a really good look at it and try and sort of deal with it before it gets to the place that it takes Nick De Noia and Steve Banerjee?